Venezuela's communications minister holds talks with government officials and experts to analyze the recently foiled mercenary incursion. Puerto Rico's governor unveils a $2.2 billion relief plan to fight the coronavirus crisis. And the World Trade Organization chief quits amid the pandemic. Hello and welcome to Telesur English. I am Estefania Bravo in Quito, Ecuador. This is from the South. Venezuela's communication minister Jorge Rodriguez has held a meeting with various government officials and experts to analyze the recently foiled mercenary incursion. The participants analyzed the legal, political, and military elements of a contract signed by opposition lawmaker Juan Guaido, which established plans for the invasion of Venezuela as well as the assassination of President Nicolás Maduro and other top officials. Participants also discussed the evidence gathered so far that points to the involvement of the Venezuelan right wing and the United States, Colombia, and drug trafficking organizations.
That's the big triangle of this crime we're gonna figure out today. One side of the triangle is the extreme right wing in Venezuela. Another side of the triangle is the Trump administration and his lucky ally personified by Colombia President Iván Duque. And the third side of the triangle is drug trafficking organizations.
Meanwhile, Venezuela's Defense Minister Vladimir Padrino Lopez has announced recent arrests near the Venezuela-Colombian border linked to the failed Operation Gideon.
We have captured 39 deserters of the Bolivarian National Armed Forces trying to enter to Colombia. We have to assume they also came to fulfill a job as part of a general scheme, a maritime invasion, another one by land, with the aim of surrounding and committing all the atrocities they were going to commit. All this has to be very clear from a military point of view. It is a planned operation, prepared and financed from abroad. And they were already divided because the mercenaries are driven by money, because they do not have a cause that unites them.
In the midst of the crisis caused by the novel coronavirus in Ecuador, various political sectors are demanding President Lenin Morenos' resignation, citing his severe mishandling of the crisis and mounting corruption allegations. We have more in this report.
Different political sectors have demanded the resignation of President Lenin Moreno, given what many call an abysmal response to the coronavirus crisis. On top of this, newly discovered corruption cases have already forced the ousting of the head of Ecuador's Social Security Institute, Paul Granda, after irregularities were found in the purchase of protective masks. The prosecutor's office has said there's possibly enough evidence to charge individuals with embezzlement of public funds.
The government is falling apart. This is an unfit government with a missing president. We have only seen him delegate responsibilities to his ministers. There is no leadership. We have asked for his resignation and to form a consensus government.
The state prosecutor has also called an audience to formulate charges against the now former head of the National Risk Control Service, Alexandra Ocles, for the alleged crime of influence peddling. Ocles resigned after it was made public that she was involved in the purchase of overpriced food kits.
They were the thieves who lied all this time, and now we are facing the consequences. They promote austerity policies, and by doing that, they completely stripped down the state, including our health system, and other sectors that could have helped us with this crisis. We are asking for the justice system to remain objective. We will not dwell in their scandals, but citizens need an answer.
The Ombudsman's office has said they will follow the trail of all corruption complaints. According to the Ombudsman, what's happening now is because the government did not act on time.
A president, a government, must make timely decisions. They cannot take 1, 2, even 5 days to make a decision. But even worse, it's not even the government acting on these corruption cases. It's the involved officials who are resigning. How can that be? How can the government only act after these officials have already resigned? If what the president said was true, when he said it wouldn't matter who was found guilty of corruption, then the response needed to be immediate.
After the former head of the Risk Control Service resigned, the Ombudsman's office demanded that official information on the coronavirus crisis be properly updated to reflect the number of dead across the country, including those that have not been officially confirmed to have died from COVID-19.
Peruvian President Martinez Kara has announced the country had reached its peak, and now the coronavirus case rate in Peru is expected to decline slowly. The Amazon city of Iquitos remains one of the hardest hit, with many doctors and nurses infected. The government pushes for recruiting medical personnel to relieve the healthcare system in the region.
In Peru, the figures are lower than other countries, but still we have to continue focus to get stable, as our government analysis showed, and also from independent private investigations from here in Peru, as from different scientific communities in the world. We have already got the peak, and we'll start getting a decrease, a slow decrease of COVID cases. This is what we have been waiting.
Several Spanish citizens and residents stranded in Uruguay due to the COVID-19 pandemic have protested in front of the Spanish embassy in Montevideo, demanding to be flown back home. According to the group, there are more than 200 Spaniards and Uruguayans residing in Spain whose flights were cancelled due to the lockdown measures. The only humanitarian flight between Montevideo and Madrid since the health emergency began took off in March 28. Protesters were also angered by recent news of an Aero Europe plane rented by a private company that flew 250 Uruguayan workers to Spain, demanding that the Spanish government arranges a similar flight.
Today we have spoken with the Chancellor and the Consul, although it was here in the street, not inside the consulate, and they have assured us that they are making every effort, although what they believe more likely is that they can get certain people on the flights that are going to depart from Buenos Aires.
I have legal residence in Spain. My place of establishment is Spain, and then, therefore, what all of us who are in this situation are demanding is that the consulate also attends to us, because residence permits expire when we leave the Spanish territory.
Were released more than 2,800 prisoners on Wednesday, a day after the death of an inmate who reportedly suffered from respiratory problems. In a statement, the government says it was releasing the prisoners to house arrest as a gesture for upcoming Mother's Day, but also mentioned that the release included elderly inmates and those with chronic illnesses. It made no reference to COVID-19, which has emerged in prison populations around the world and poses a great risk to inmates and the often overcrowded institutions. The Nicaraguan government reports only 25 confirmed COVID-19 cases and 8 deaths. Moving on, for the first time in 132 years, the annual festival commemorated the ban of slavery in Brazil did not take place due to lockdown orders. Let's have a look.
On May 13, 1888, slavery was banned in Brazil. From that day forwards, the Afro-Brazilian residents of Uberaba, a city in Minas Gerais cattle country, have held an annual street party commemorating the date and honoring their ancestors.
It started at the moment when they learned that black people were no longer slaves in Brazilian territory. My grandfather said that he was sleeping and his dad woke him up and said, "Wake up, black slave, because slavery is over." So from that moment forward, we've commemorated on this day. My grandfather passed it on to my dad. My dad passed it to me, and I'm passing it on to my children.
For the first time in 132 years, the festival did not take place. Due to the lockdown orders, the City Culture Ministry asked for the groups to film themselves playing and broadcast it on Facebook Live.
Everyone should stay in their candomblé temple, their prayer center, or in their house, because that is the only way we are going to beat COVID-19.
But the Mozambique and Congada drum groups that normally take part in this festival collectively decided not to play at all and to remain in isolation.
I'm happy that everyone decided to stay home so we can pass through this moment, but I'm very sad that we didn't commemorate May 30th this year.
The hope is that by next year, this 132-year-old celebration of resistance will be able to resume as normal. Brian Mir, Telesur, São Paulo.
We'll be right back. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. More news now. Puerto Rico's governor has unveiled a plan to spend more than $2.2 billion in U.S. aid to fight the coronavirus crisis. Governor Wanda Vazquez said about $300 million will be used in part to increase testing, expand contact tracing, and help the unemployed. But officials acknowledge there are tens of thousands of people still waiting for benefits announced shortly after a lockdown imposed in mid-March.
There are three foundations to assign the $2.2 billion. First, on health, government, and economy. Regarding health, we are going to focus on testing, tracing, isolation, and treatment as the four main areas.
The Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis has announced the dissolution of Parliament, a move he said was retroactive and had taken effect on Tuesday. The National Assembly would have automatically prorogued this Thursday the 5-year anniversary since its first sitting. In an address to the nation on Wednesday night, the Prime Minister said elections would be held in 90 days, though an official date was not announced.
The next election will bring certainty to our federation, preserve our democracy, and allow us to continue to deliver a brighter future, creating employment and prosperity, building bigger homes, and keeping us safe. Let us stay together and see this through. In this election, you will have a clear choice. You can go forward to a safer and brighter future with team unity, or backwards to the past, which you rejected in 2015.
St. Lucia has once again announced the full recovery of all coronavirus positive patients. 18 people had contracted the viral respiratory illness on the island, and as prevention measures began to ease, the chief medical officer is reminding the public that this is not a license to be reckless.
Although we are pleased to maintain a low transmission level of COVID-19 in country, we remind the public that we are still at risk and must remain vigilant as the threat continues. As we progress with the phase reopening, we must ensure that all protocols are adhered to. We recognize the efforts of a wide cross-section of the population in adopting the recommended infection prevention and control measures and taking the necessary precautions when having to venture out in public. We would like to see these measures adopted at the community level as well.
Jamaica's Minister of Health says plans to relax some of the country's COVID-19 restrictions will go ahead, despite the fact that the country has recorded 507 cases. Thus far, 100 people have recovered and 9 others have died.
There is no risk-free approach. It really is about how do we gradually resume normality of life while managing the risk of COVID. And it can't be that we wait until we have no cases for a prolonged period of time, because the chances of that, frankly speaking, could be remote based on the spread of the disease and the history of the disease across the world. I don't know of any country where activities only resume after you've had no cases for 14 days. So we do appreciate that there are risks involved, but there are other factors that have to be considered.
Mauritius has become the second country in Africa to be declared virus-free. The island nation's official COVID-19 page said as of Monday, 322 people have recovered out of the 332 confirmed cases. The remaining 10 have died. May 11th also marked the 15th consecutive day that no new case was recorded in the country. A lockdown remains in place to halt the possible spread of the virus. Weeks ago, Mauritania declared itself virus-free with 6 people recuperating and 1 fatality. Another infection was subsequently recorded. Burundi has ordered the expulsion of the World Health Organization's expert team backing the country's response to the coronavirus pandemic just days before a presidential election. No reason has been given for the decision, but according to diplomatic sources, Burundi's foreign ministry aborted a similar attempt to expel the same 4 officials a month ago.
We are in communication with the government of Burundi to clarify and understand the reasoning behind this decision they have taken. And we are in the meantime then working with the UN system in the country to organize the departure of our staff.
The Cuban medical mission, who was sent to South Africa to help the fight against COVID-19, has completed the mandatory quarantine and are now ready to be deployed in different provinces. The team of more than 200 Cuban doctors arrived in South Africa last month to bolster local healthcare workers in their efforts to halt the spread of the coronavirus. The group was immediately quarantined in Pretoria in line with the standard protocol for those entering the country. On Thursday, the Cuban medical team sent a message thanking South Africans for their warm welcome they received since arriving in the country. The Ministry of Infrastructure has announced the resumption of activities that involve the construction of different infrastructures in preparation for the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Rwanda is supposed to host. The construction activities are supposed to help with the problem traffic jams in Kigali City.
CHOGM 2020 was supposed to convene from the 21st to the 26th of next month here in Kigali, but was postponed because of the coronavirus pandemic. Still, preparations for the major event have largely not been seriously disrupted. There was a brief pause, but we have now resumed activities, especially because most of the work is mechanized and not very many people are needed. We believe that those activities to do with infrastructure development will be completed within a few months, as had been planned. With the expansion and upgrade of several roads within the city, the developments are being welcomed. There used to be our different residential walls here, and they removed them and put one solid large wall. It looks good, really good actually. It helps us because it was hard always having to go around. After this road has tarmac on it, it will help speed up development. You can see that the road has been significantly upgraded and our journeys will no longer be disrupted when some roads are closed, which used to cause problems. The road upgrades are indeed meant to help address issues related to traffic jams in the city, not just because Kigali will be hosting the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. The problem of traffic jams means vehicles were spending too much time in transit, but with those other roads being upgraded, it means they will be able to divert and help reduce traffic congestion. The road upgrades include the Amahoro Stadium Gasabo District Stretch, Kaveza Alpha Palace, and Nyabisindu Nyarutarama. There are also greening activities in the city, and last year the government approved up to 20.1 billion Rwandan francs to go towards these and other activities. 10.7 billion of that money is meant for the expansion of the airplane parking space at the Kigali International Airport, as well as other activities at the airport.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. More news now. The World Trade Organization chief has announced he will step down on August 31st, a year before his term ends, despite the COVID-19 pandemic ravaging the global economy. Roberto Azevedo said it had been a personal decision reached with his family and stressed that he was not leaving to pursue political opportunities. The 164-member organization was already in crisis before the pandemic hit, dealing with raging trade wars and scathing criticism by U.S. President Donald Trump.
My decision was reached after long and hard reflection and much discussion with my family. For the reasons that I have outlined, I believe that it would be best if members promptly move ahead with the process for selecting the next Director General.
China has slammed the United States over accusations that Chinese hackers were attempting to steal research on developing a vaccine against the coronavirus. The spokesperson for the Chinese Foreign Ministry also said the Trump administration should, quote, focus on their own prevention and control work, after Trump described COVID-19 as a plague from China.
China expresses strong dissatisfaction and firm opposition to such a smear by the U.S. side. Judging from past records, the U.S. has carried out the largest cyber theft operations worldwide. China has made significant strategic achievements in its fight against the COVID-19 epidemic. China is also leading the world in COVID-19 vaccine research and treatment. Therefore, China has more reasons to worry about cyber espionage. Epidemic diseases know no borders or race. They are common challenges for mankind, and they are an unpredictable eventuality. If US politicians really put the safety and health of the American people first, they should immediately stop blaming and discrediting other countries, and focus on their own prevention and control work, as well as promote international cooperation against the epidemic. This is the only correct path to take.
The French Prime Minister has announced an €18 billion rescue plan for its tourism sector to weather the coronavirus crisis. Edouard Philippe also announced that people will be allowed to go on holidays in July and August.
Regarding holidays, and again, these will be subject to the evolution of the epidemic and possible localized restrictions depending on its evolution. We are working on a reasonable scenario. French citizens will be able to go on holiday in France in July and August. France means metropolitan France and its overseas territories.
The Russian government has announced an emergency handout of 23.4 billion rubles, or $316 million, for airlines struggling because of the coronavirus pandemic. President Vladimir Putin had already disclosed the amount of the planned handout from Russia's reserve fund, but the publication of a government decree allows airlines to apply for funding. Russia's civil aviation agency said flagship airline Aeroflot had already applied for the funding. The government said Russian airlines can spend the money to cover outgoings, including salaries and the cost of leasing planes. The Japanese government has lifted a state of emergency imposed due to the coronavirus for the majority of the country, but kept it in place for top cities like Tokyo and Osaka. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has also announced that a second emergency budget will be allocated in addition to the $1.1 trillion worth of emergency funds.
As of today, the government will lift the state of emergency in 39 prefectures before it is due to expire at the end of the month. By lifting the state of emergency in many areas, we're going to develop a new lifestyle, which is the lifestyle of the world to live with coronavirus. Today is the start of it.
Amid coronavirus restrictions, a small group of Palestinians have gathered in Gaza to mark the 72nd anniversary of the Nakba. Men, women, and children stood together, proudly displaying their national flag. The 1948 Palestinian exodus occurred when more than 700,000 Palestinian Arabs were expelled from their homes during the 1948 war. Joining the group of demonstrators, Hamas leader Ismail Radwan promised the fall of the Trump deal regarding plans to annex much of the occupied West Bank into Jewish state.
On the 72nd anniversary of the Palestinian Nakba, and on the second anniversary of the massacre by the occupation of our Palestinian people on the day of the transfer of the American embassy to Jerusalem, we certify today that Palestine was and will remain for the Palestinian people, and Jerusalem is the one and eternal capital united for our people, and that the blood of the martyrs will not go to waste. We assure that we are on the path of resistance, the path of our martyrs, on the path of the liberation, the fall of the deal of the century, the Trump deal, and achieving the aspirations of our Palestinian people.
And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And be sure to follow us on social media as well. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and of course on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Stefania Bravo. Until next time.